Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. We are now on to day 8 of my 13 days of Halloween, and today was actually a late addition to the lineup. When I initially set all these out back at the beginning of this one I decided to take off or leave off the list because I didn't think it was going to be very good, which... I'm talking about Battledogs from 2013, and look at that cover. Like, it looks ridiculous. So that's, the idea I had in my head was that this is going to be a dud. Let's switch it with something else. And then the other reason was just because I didn't think the horror elements would be too strong on this to fit into this theme, but I decided, you know what? It's horror. It's listed as horror on IMDb. Yes, it's going to be more action horror, but think of something like Aliens or something like that. Like, it is still horror, but done in a more action-packed way, I guess. And so I decided, after watching the trailer for it on one of the other movies earlier in these 8 days here, I decided that looks kind of fun. I really want to watch it, and I own it, so let's add this one in. So Battledogs now becomes movie number 8 for day 8 here. And yeah, this one I'm really excited to talk about. So let's do it. If you guys are enjoying these 13 days of Halloween, please give this video a like down below. That really does help me out. But with that said, let's not waste any time at all. Let's dive right into day 8, where I get to talk about Battledogs from 2013. So Battledogs was directed by Alexander Yellin, and you guys can see I do have the DVD of this. Like I mentioned, I picked this up at Disc Replay, I think just last month, so a recent add to the collection. But this is actually Alexander Yellin's directorial debut. He has done a few things since this. Most notably, I would say, he did like 8 episodes of Z Nation, which is Asylum's answer to The Walking Dead. It is kind of their low-budget take on it, and honestly, I saw the first, maybe half of that first season. I thought it was pretty good. I just, for whatever reason, never got around to finishing it, but it was a pretty enjoyable show. So that's one I would really like to talk about at some point in the future, just because I was enjoying that one. But anyway, Battledogs, as you can see on the back here, which they always put this as like, it looks like a pull quote, but it absolutely is not a pull quote. It's just like the marketing team or the producer, director, whatever, trying to explain what the intended audience for this movie is. This says action-packed creature feature in the vein or in the tradition of Aliens and District 9. So I will admit that this, I guess it has more in common with Aliens just being an action horror film, but District 9, I didn't really get that from it at all. So I'm not really sure where that came from. Just maybe them being creatures, but it really didn't feel like District 9 at all. But anyway, these Battledogs are essentially werewolves. They just, apparently I was watching one of the making of features, which there is a gag reel and a making of. The making of is only like 10 minutes and it's pretty standard, like most of them are on these Asylum discs. But apparently Sci-Fi wanted a very specific look to these creatures, and so they didn't want it to look too much like a wolf or too much like a dog, and so they went with this thing in between and then exaggerated it. Honestly, on the back, they look like giant rats, but in the movie itself, I would say they look much more like werewolves, and they're actually a pretty cool design. Don't get me wrong, the CGI on this is not great. It is low budget Asylum CGI, but it's consistent and it's fun, and that's what's important for a movie like this. So with Battledogs, we are following essentially a like werewolf outbreak of sorts, which is a really interesting idea. At the beginning of the film, we're following patient 0, who is in an airport, and all of a sudden she like has to go to the bathroom and she changes into a battle dog or a werewolf, whatever you want to call it. I noticed in the making of, they always referred to them as Battledogs, which makes sense. They're trying to stay on brand, but they're werewolves. And so she turns into a werewolf, and then she attacks other people in the airport. They turn into werewolves. So what I thought was so fascinating was how this was basically like a zombie film, but done with werewolves instead, because anytime you got the saliva, you would then turn into this battle dog. And so that was a really cool idea. But it's not really what this movie is selling itself as, which I'll talk about in just a second. So after we have this initial outbreak, the military kind of gathers all of these people back who have now turned human again after all the destruction that they've done. There's like 270 or 220, something like that, of these battle dog people now. And so they quarantine them on like Rikers Island or whatever, because of course the attack was at JFK. And so they quarantine them on Rikers Island, and they are trying to do tests and see what's going on with them. But because we are dealing with the US military, they decide that, and I think that's where the title comes in, instead of just having these be creatures that they need to eradicate or cure, they could be used for military purposes. And that's kind of where the movie takes off. So what the film is selling itself as is like it says on the tagline here, the population of Manhattan is under quarantine for now. And that's not really what this is about. Yes, it gets to that point, but that's later on in the film. That like the main focus for this is what the military is trying to do to weaponize these creatures. And there is basically like one good guy who is trying to stop it. And so that's kind of the main premise. Yes, it does get to Manhattan. There is a quarantine that has to be done, things like that. And that's pretty fun, but it's toward later stages of the film. So that's not really what this is about. It's about these creatures and how they are either going to cure them or just eliminate them. I really got to talk about the cast because they did a fantastic job casting this. And right from the start, I'll say this is one of the best acted Asylum films that I've seen during these 13 days. It is just really well done. So our main character is played by Craig Schaefer, I think is how you would say his last name, from Some Kind of Wonderful, A River Runs Through It, Nightbreed. And then his kind of like the main antagonist, I guess, is played by Dennis Haysbert, who is the Allstate man, which is just fantastic. On top of that, our patient zero is none other than Ariana Richards, who is like the main little girl from Jurassic Park. So that I didn't even recognize her at first. It wasn't until I was looking up the cast while I was going through the start of it, because I was like, I know this person. How do I know them? And then I looked it up, and oh my gosh, it is, I don't know her character's name, I guess, I don't remember, but the main girl from Jurassic Park. So that was super cool to see her in something new, because it has been a long time since, and frankly, I don't think I've seen her in anything other than Jurassic Park, to be honest, but she was really strong in this. She did a really good job. And then there is Kate Vernon, who a lot of you will probably know from Battlestar Galactica. I honestly didn't recognize her or know her because I've never seen Battlestar Galactica, but that's another well-known name. We have Ernie Hudson in this from Ghostbusters. Bill Duke is in here from Predator. Like, just a super strong cast and well-known names from the past, which, you know, they're going to be cheaper to hire because they are not in their prime, but they're still very recognizable, and they're just good at what they do. They are talented actors, and so they did a fantastic job in this movie. I loved the casting. It was just so much fun, and I was really honestly surprised by how good Schaefer was in the lead role. He showed a lot of range of emotion and just handled the situation really well. And then Allstate man, like, I had no idea he was such a good actor, but he is quite good in this. His role is a lot more like one note than maybe some of these other roles, but he still does a really good job with it. So the casting on this was just spot on, and it made it so much fun to watch. Outside of the cast, I think the premise for this is really interesting. One thing that I thought was pretty cool about the way they handled these werewolves or Battledogs is that when they turn, they still maintained somewhere inside that kind of human consciousness. And so there were points where our main character was trying to essentially talk these werewolves down because they were about to do something bad, something that was going to either kill him or someone around him. And so that little bit of humanity that they kept into these Battledogs, I thought was really interesting, and they handled it well. It's not used a ton, but there are two moments where I remember it being used. One of them is a pretty key moment, and I think they do a really good job with that. It's just unique to this film, and so it makes it stand out, which is always good when you're dealing with kind of a seemingly generic action horror film like this. This one just had me engaged right from the start. I honestly did not expect this one to be any good, but once that zombie-like outbreak happened in the airport, I was just like, what are they going to do with this? This is different. And so I was hooked. And the way that they handle that from that zombie outbreak, we get to the military aspect of it. And that part was really interesting because essentially the good guy is trying to be stopped by our military because at least like the bad guys at the front of the military, at the head of the military that is trying to weaponize these Battledogs. And so because you have that dichotomy with our protagonist and our antagonist, I thought their relationship was really interesting. How they were trying to stop him was pretty cool. just sending, like at one point they send in a battle dog or these werewolves to try to attack him, and watching him try to fight for survival was really well done, and the fact that it was done in an airport just makes it that much more fun. We do spend a lot of time on our island, but at the end, like we talked about, it does get to Manhattan, and so it does open up a little bit more, but that's not really this whole quarantine of Manhattan thing isn't really what it's about, and it makes it, I understand why they went with that route, like in the marketing. It's because it gives it a bigger feel than it really is. Yes, that is there, but due to budget constraints, once they get to Manhattan, it doesn't really feel like there's any real threat, because there are only so many CGI battle dogs that they have on screen. They don't really mess with like the just like random population of New York. I think Sharknado even kind of touches on that a little bit better, because on the beach, you see all these people at the beginning getting attacked on the beach, where with this one, you don't really see much at all other than like military or our main characters dealing with these battle dogs, which if they were unleashed in Central Park, you would have, you know, just thousands of people that would be turning. And so this would be escalating on such a massive scale, but that's not the way it goes here. One of our main things that the film is trying to do is trying to find the cure. And of course, it's going to go back to patient zero, but they don't get it right away, and I thought that was cool too. Their first idea is not necessarily the one that's going to get them the answers that they expect, and so I thought that was interesting how they played that up. The ending, it is a little bit abrupt, I will say, but I think the scope on it works well at the end, because we're dealing with like destroying bridges and things like that, and it was a little unexpected how things went down at the very end, but I think overall they kind of keep it to what you think is going to happen for the most part. But again, I cannot rave enough about how good the acting was in this. The premise it's a really good premise, and it's one of those from Asylum that actually delivers on that premise. So this was shockingly enjoyable. This was definitely the best film that I've seen from Asylum, at least my favorite film from Asylum, and one that I would recommend if you are able to find cheap and you don't mind questionable CGI, because yes, the CGI is not great. They are working within a budget, and so the CGI just doesn't look fantastic. You definitely tell you're looking at CGI. They don't have a lot of mix in with practical effects. There are some, but like when there's a couple points where the battle dogs are fighting each other, 100% CGI, and it does look a little silly at points, but hey, if you can get past that like I did, like I was so engaged by the story they were telling, and just kind of the idea of this, that I didn't really mind the fact that the CGI was mediocre. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and it's one that I would definitely recommend so far the most out of these 8 days. So for me, this one was a winner when I really thought this was going to be one of the worst ones of the bunch. So I ended up giving Battledogs from 2013 4 out of 5 stars. All right, so that is day 8 in the books. We had a really bad one 2 days ago. Sharknado I thought was pretty good, and then one I thoroughly enjoyed today. And I think the reason I liked Battledogs more than Sharknado was just because of how seriously the actors were taking it. Like there were no winks to the audience, like there wasn't something like Zombies, and just the premise was, this is going to sound so silly, but the premise was rooted in reality enough that it felt like it's something that, hey, maybe this could happen, and maybe this is kind of the way things would go, as opposed to this tornado with sharks in it. And so I think that's why I ended up enjoying Battledogs a little bit more than Sharknado, but that's neither here nor there. What I want to hear is from you guys. Have you seen Battledogs? And if not, is this one you might want to check out now? I think it's available streaming. I do own the DVD, but I think I saw it's like on Pluto TV. If you have that, it might be on Tubi. So check for that if you're interested, but this is one I enjoyed. And so if you guys do watch it, I would love to hear what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I always appreciate those and all of your support. So thank you for that. As always, if you guys did enjoy this video though, please give it a like down below. That really does help me out. And like I always say, I don't just talk movies, I talk all things media, be it books, movies, collectibles, video games. If it's media related, I'm interested in it. And if you are too, you might consider subscribing. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.